I have to script this out to make sure I hit as many points as I can remember at the time. I'm not going to get into any theoretical business. This is more or less, a lot more than less, going to be bullet points with explanations. Do note, there will be explanations of what's going on and why. And just as important, if not more, no, just as important, there will be answers as to what to do on all sides. This means black people as well as cops, since they now are feeling what it's like to be hunted and for some reason don't like it. The only thing you will have to do is listen, keyword, to the end of the video. Let's get started. This is interesting. Despite what has been happening with black people ever since they were brought to this country, much less the 60s, much less the last 8 years, as of 7/23/2016, it was a white man named Larken Rose, I believe I said his first name right, Larken Rose, who wrote the article, When Should You Shoot a Cop? After all the years that have passed since seeing it the first time, I have yet to hear any refutation of its contents, logical or otherwise. I would have added the reading of his article, which is posted on his channel, as well as the channel Cop Block. That's Cop Block, just for all of you who choose not to hear properly. But I'd like one and all to go to their channels and give them the views and credit for it. While not trying to race bait, if a white man can write that, yet whites, compared to blacks, and perhaps to a lesser extent Hispanic/Latino, are going through less harassment at best and oppression and extermination at worst, from law enforcement, at the very least as a percentage of the total population, what does one and all believe said blacks could write as far as how to liberate oneself from terrorism, which is exactly what the current state of police in the United States is. Terrorist. In any case, you can feel free to keep watching my video till it's over, especially if you're going to comment. Then watch theirs, or you can pause mine, split screen your monitor, and watch theirs. Link in the more info panel, but do make sure you watch that video. It's very interesting indeed. Anyone who's going to play dumb like there isn't a war on black people by the police, or whatever other name you want to use, leave now. I'm not in the fucking mood. No doubt most if not all of you who are trying to play dumb are the right-wing conservative, are on the right-wing conservative side, more or less, a lot more than less. But before you go, I want to ask, if it was all black male cops killing all white male and or female civilians and getting away with it, would you come with the same foolishness? You mind telling me why it is that when blacks are being terrorized by the government, national and or state and or local, in any form or fashion, this includes extensions of it, of which cops are one, you have all the reasons humanly possible as to why it's justified. Yet when it happens to be you simply not getting your way, much less when you face oppression, never at the same level as us, mind you, all of a sudden, my rights, Constitution, Oath Keepers, don't tread on me, take back the country, down with government, Tree of Liberty needs blood of patriots and all else. If you and your ilk went through, on average, 1/100th of what black people go through, again, on average, on a daily basis, there would be a revolutionary war the size of World War I, II, and III in this country. In any case, you all can get the fuck out now. Every time I hear the crime talking points from the same types and kinds of people that would state all the reasons they can make up as to why cops were correct in killing the black men that they did in each and every case, A little part of me dies on the inside, and I inwardly laugh at said people. Let's get this straight. One, Chicago, the go-to for white supremacist deflections, much like all other places that can be named, is irrelevant to the topic of police terrorism of black people. Two, black on black crime is not only denounced in the black community, but measures are taken in said community to combat it as much as resources will allow, and since there isn't too much resources of any kind in the black community, the results or effectiveness of said measures are roughly consonant with that. In addition, blacks that are caught are put in jail, meaning punished. They aren't getting to walk free like most, if not all, of the cops are able to do. 3. The reason for crime in the black community is the same reason for crime almost anywhere else. There is crime and in almost every other racial group, that being low, fair economic opportunity. In the black community's case, stemming from historic structural racism, white supremacy, and a term that I've coined, or as far as I know, I've coined it, I haven't heard it anywhere else. You're hearing it here first. Cascading intergenerational poverty. It shouldn't be too hard to understand, considering you understand that the rich pass on their wealth to their kids, more or less. Wealth isn't the only thing that can and does get passed on from one generation to the next. Now then, I say fair, quote-unquote, economic opportunity because the current level of economic opportunity, quote-unquote, in the high crime areas of the black community is comparable to expecting a 3-foot tall dwarf to dunk a basketball on a standard NBA size hoop, or height hoop anyway. For anyone wondering why blacks can't advance out of it, much like other races that came here even back in the 60s and 70s and advanced, jeez. I could make a whole other video on that bullshit deflection, and if prodded hard and or long enough, I will. But short answer is, we did, and it got literally burnt to the fucking ground on some bullshit accusation, which later found out to be a complete lie. As far as why there's crime in the upper, mostly white, annals of wealth, such as Wall Street and government and such, where no one is exactly selling rocks and skipping bullets to get a few dollars to buy food, well, you can come with your own conclusions about that. 4. Considering most people of X race, on average, live among other people of said race, black on black crime is no different than white on white or X on X crime. X race person tends to have violence done to them by another person of the same race. The few times there is X race on Y race violence, it's usually, if not always, because one race was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Think Ned Flanders in the Hood, or I don't know, Tyrone Johnson in the middle of fucking Potomac or something. Think some shit like that. Usually wrong place at the wrong time, or said and or did something that they probably knew they shouldn't. 5. None of the people committing black on black crime in Chicago or anywhere else are getting paid by taxpayer dollars. The police are. Therefore, however much black on black crime there is null and void, irrelevant. Just as it would be, no doubt be irrelevant if this whole thing were reversed and it was majority black male cops killing majority unarmed white male civilians. Any at all, much less at the same rate. Now that all that forest is cleared, let's get on with it. Why is this happening now, you may ask? A fair question considering what, you may ask. Considering blacks have, as a whole, had problems with law enforcement since they were brought here. Editing on the fly, gotta love it. It tells you it's all raw and not filtered. If we're to be technical, and certainly since the 60s onward to present day, for the most part, this hasn't been happening just now. It's always been happening. What has changed is that now everyone has a cell phone camera, and every cell phone, down to the bullshit track phones, can record in at least 720p. All of which is augmented by this thing called the internet. So it's no longer police's word versus black person's word, which automatically means the police is telling the truth and therefore believe no matter what. Now it's police's word versus black person's word versus unbiased, incapable of lying, assuming not edited in any form or fashion, machine's word, or ones and zeros. Unfortunately, though, despite what said machine proves, cops are usually still believed and get away with whatever, or, if they face any punishment at all, are given a quote-unquote punishment that is essentially the same as being believed. All unbiased absolute proof that demands no less than the full wrath of God itself as punishment be damned. The actual question that you may, or at least should, be wanting to ask is, why does it seem as though it's happening more frequently than normal? The reason is simple. White supremacy feels threatened. And of course, thank you for all of you that have just turned it off, but for the rest of you that's still here, let me just say it again. White supremacy feels threatened that going into the future, the supremacy, assuming no zeitgeist of truth, fair and equal justice is in place, may not be so white anymore. Connect the dots here. Europe, the origin of white supremacy, is supposedly getting invaded by refugees, in addition to to quote some of the nationalists side in the UK Euro area, quote, infestation of Muslims. America is going down in more ways than one that can't all be explained here. And despite white dominance geopolitically and geoeconomically, there isn't anywhere else for white power to set up shop. White power and supremacy can, for now, terrorize from the skies on the entire world. But that does nothing if it can't land on the ground and fight on land, and that it can't do without risking getting cleansed from existence by all other groups of people. Note, I didn't say the extermination of white people, or, to be as technical as possible, all who are classified as white, and yet all much less white and not of Hispanic, Latino background. I said extermination of white supremacy on the earth. Okay? So, no problem with white people here. Well, I could spend about 10 hours explaining it all out. Since I'm not getting paid and this video isn't going to get more than 50 to 300 views, all I can say is do some unbiased independent research. One book I do recommend that you read to help you on your way is the book titled Coming Apart, The State of White America 1960 to 2010. I found that book while working at my former part-time, at the bar in DC. A lot of reading got done there. The book is by a man named Charles Murray. Now, some of you may know him as the man that co-authored a book called The Bell Curve, a book which, at the very least, seems to suggest a link between intelligence and race. I've never read that book, and I don't plan on doing so since its imbecile suggestion or implication or is instantly made null and void with a small amount of uncommon sense, logic, and a few minutes on the internet if you really can't figure it out from your own brain. This book, though, minus two specific parts, I have, and most everyone else can, verify through life experience to be true, especially having, and this is in my case now, especially having grown up in Potomac when I came to this country. I see the climate of the USA right now that Trump is almost in the White House, and Trump, more than any other cookie-cutter presidential hopeful, is a man that all of white supremacy has gotten emboldened by. And, you know, let me actually stop here. Trump obviously isn't going to get in, but at the time of this writing, and because I don't feel like editing it out right now, I just put Trump is about to get in the White House. You can see how long ago this thing was written compared to when I'm actually filming it because of that. It's more or less obvious that Trump isn't going to get in there now. Not that Hillary is any better, but you see what I'm saying here. Moving on. Emboldened by and become less the quote silent majority and is now anything but silent and anything but silent majority. Many white supremacists in this country have been biding their time and holding their tongue, and now that they have someone who thinks and acts like them, damn near to a T, so close to getting control of the reins, there's a bit more fanfare and tightening of the rank and file in their camp. They more or less are under the same impression that the quote-unquote good old days will be restored. For anybody who understands that talk, good old days. Let's just be clear. The good old days was any time before the 1960s. I'll leave you to figure out why 1960. In any case, I see Trump as a blessing. Why? Because much like the people that want to keep the Confederate flag standing, Trump is letting myself and, if they're intelligent, all other non-white minorities know who their enemies are. The amount of mental notes I personally have on so many people right now can overfill the universe. Now, at this point, I expect most, really anyone non-black, to say something along the lines of, quote, whoa, no, dude, just no. That and what does this have to do with cops and black people? End quote. Right. Well, first thing, I'm not asking you any questions, so you can keep answering no. No one asks. You can keep answering questions no one asks by saying no all you want. What I said still stands. Secondly, the reason this is happening to blacks so much is not only because many white supremacists go into law enforcement, and this actually is provable. The FBI maybe not recently, but sometime in the not too distant past, has put out a letter warning that white supremacist groups have infiltrated law enforcement. So, not making that up. You can go research it yourself. Anyway, having blacks so much because of white supremacy in law enforcement, and I'll get into this more in the solution section of this video, blacks are the only group that don't have various forms of protection. Again, keep that in mind for later. Lastly, most other groups more or less bow down and bow out to white supremacy as a whole. Blacks are the only group that, for whatever reason, white supremacy sees as the most threatening. With the Hispanic/Latino camp a distant second. Asians and Indians would be the obvious choice as to the ones that are most threatening to white supremacy. Not only do both outperform whites in school and subjects that are of consequence, but one has a higher standard of living than whites as a whole, much less the white supremacists. Problem is, not only do Asians not have the raw numbers when it comes when looking at their population in percentage of the entire population, but from what I've come to understand from looking at some of the government stats, Indians come to be known as Southeast Asians, and Orientals. Exactly. You say that word and people get kind of uncomfortable, right? But Orientals come to be known as East Asians are lumped together under the term Asian, which is actually right since they're from Asia. However, looking at a map of other countries, you'll see that even the Middle East is part of Asia. I see no distinction from them on any government stats. I can only come to the conclusion that the population of Asians in the US includes all the people from the continent of Asia. Break that down into Mideastern, Indian, East Asian, etc., and the population would be much lower in the US for East Asians. Think Chinese, Japanese, Koreans, and all that. I believe Thai is Southeast Asian. The ones that have, at least on average, the highest standards of living in the USA, and Indians. Okay. Lastly, neither group is seen as threatening to white supremacy, probably for the fact that their history doesn't involve white supremacy from the USA anywhere near as much as blacks. Now, of course, we can sit here and talk about India, East India Company, and all that stuff. Yes, I'm very well aware of that. Well, that's Europe whites, not American whites. We're talking America here, so that's why that still stands, right? It doesn't involve white supremacy from the USA anywhere near as much as blacks, nor is it as close in history, with residual effects still felt to present day. Then there's the fact that, at least on the surface, it seems as though both groups are neck and neck for the title of who can bow down and bow out to white supremacy the most, with Asians inching out ahead as the, to quote Charles Murray, again remember that book, honorary whites. Hispanic and Latino make up the biggest single minority, quote unquote, in America as of this writing, and they are looked at with suspicion. They, however, aren't messed with as much as blacks for reasons I'll explain in the solutions section. No other group on the planet has the kind of history on the same scale and magnitude as blacks in the Western world. That's not something you can just forget and act as though it didn't happen. That should be understandable considering what happened to the Jews in World War II, which is insignificant in comparison to all the relevant metrics, on all relevant metrics. Yet they will never let the rest of the planet, much less Germany, forget what happened to them. This is despite the fact that the rest of the world has nothing to do with it, and Africa was a test run for the Jewish Holocaust. Something for you to look up. And do look that up for anybody who doesn't believe me. If you think that Hitler just planned that shit out and just did it on the fly, nah. Trial runs, beta testing was done in Africa for that. So, yeah. I don't even know why I said Jewish Holocaust. It's not like they were the only ones that were destroyed in that thing. They were just the ones the most vocal about it, but there was a lot of people. Anyway, yeah, do look that part up as well. I can't imagine even Hillary, much less Trump, sitting idly by as black male cops kill off unarmed white people, male and female, at the same rate. Keyword for anyone who wants to uh, all of a sudden come with the raw numbers argument, an argument never used when talking about crime, uh, as has been the case in the reverse. It sure is sad that even people outside the USA have asked, why is he doing nothing? While I was working at a bar in DC, no shortage of white, British, and Australian people, both talking to me as well as me overhearing conversations, let it be known that they couldn't wait to get their business trip or vacation that their non-white, um, though not necessarily black spouse picked, uh, to be over so they could leave. They all seemed to hit the same point in some form or fashion, that they were afraid the cops would find some way to believe that they had a gun when it was really a cell phone camera or passport, or that they were black when it's plain as day that they weren't, and shoot them. I had to think to myself, how how the fuck are these people, some of which are so white and pale that they make fresh powdered snow look black as tar, to be scared of getting killed by cops? How bad is it really that even whites from other parts of the planet are scared, somehow even more than the people getting targeted and having no country to go back to? Hmm? It stuck in my mind, but then this comment from YouTube user Zhao Yu said it all. And here it is. Obama has been the biggest detriment to black people ever since he got his hand slapped for standing up for Henry Louis Gates. Anybody who doesn't know that one, go look it up. Trump gets in, and you bet a bone will be thrown to the white supremacists. Or hell, they might take the whole skeleton. Hillary gets in, and God help heterosexual men with the cesspool of feminism that will instantly take this country from the moment she's announced as the winner and up to 80% of a decade later. I'm 29 years old as of this writing and video. Darkness is coming no matter who gets in, and if either get full stranglehold of that office, I'll be 37 before the darkness more or less clears and some semblance of light has a chance of coming again. Yet under this president, black when there's something bad to say, and biracial when there's something good to say, under this president, black people's situation has gone from bad to worse. The worst part about all of that is that all these things are happening to black people at an increased rate, and all the white supremacists can point to the token black face in the White House and say, no, there's no racism, look at our president. It's kind of like, well, I'm not racist, I have black friends, or I'm not racist, I fuck black pussy, or take black dick, you know? That argument. Again, note how he's black now when when a deflection is needed, but biracial when the coast is clear. He's never white, though, interestingly enough. Hopefully all black people everywhere unloads on Obama for doing nothing. Why? Because if they don't, when whichever tyrant gets in after him, because if they don't, then whichever tyrant gets in after him can allow God knows what, and blacks as a whole won't be able to say anything lest they be told, you didn't complain when Obama was in office, so why are you complaining all of a sudden when a white guy or girl is in? Henry Louis Gates was the start of Obama's first term. He's now on the last step of his last term. Now is the time for him to do something for black people specifically, and not have to worry. Of course, one and all knows he won't. Why black people specifically, you may ask? Simple. One, because black people are the ones getting exterminated at the highest rate of anyone. Two, because anytime the word minority, quote unquote, is used, everyone else but black people end up getting the lion's share of fill in the blank. Understand, white women are a minority. Hell, white men with red hair and 13-inch dicks are a minority. Saying minority means nothing and never has meant anything. Most, if not all, the things that were historically and right up to present day supposed to go to black people specifically ended up going to quote unquote minorities, of which few, if any, were black. 3. Other groups have gotten things given to them specifically from LGBT right down to Jews. Few, if any, have complained about these. In fact, I'm willing to bet few, if any, even know about these. I'm not sure why then there would be any resistance. I'm going to pretend I don't know why there should be any resistance to blacks getting laws specific to protecting them at least. I'm sure if law enforcement, not some one-off civilian quote-unquote terrorist, were to pick off anyone unarmed saying shalom, or anyone that's unarmed with, or any man that's unarmed with booty shorts showing more ass cleavage than a 14-year-old girl, or hell, any woman who's unarmed, who likes pussy more than I do, if that's even possible, I bet no one would have a problem. So since all these other non-white, or actually no, sometimes even white, but these other groups, LGBT, women, Muslim, whatever, or maybe not even Muslim, but Jews, whatever, they all get rights specific to them. Yeah, again, I'm going to pretend I don't know why people have a problem with blacks getting laws specific to them. And here come the people with the Constitution saying how that's not, yeah, well, you know what, you're not saying that with anybody else, so you can take that and fuck yourself. I'm going to get rid of the standard issue deflections right now, bullet point style with minimal explanations, because most, if not all, the people making them more or less know it's bull, a lot more than less. 1. Cops don't need better training. No, they don't. No, cops don't need better training. I would agree that cops do need better training if all cops were doing this, but the fact that you have yet to hear or see any female cops killing anyone at the same rate, or actually any at all. I don't ever hear of any female cops killing anyone, um, much less unarmed people, black or not, should tell you something. Then there's also the fact that you hardly, if ever, hear of any non-white male cops killing unarmed people of any race. The one or two times that you do hear about it, uh, in comparison, it at least could be seen as an accident, or could be argued as an accident, whether it actually is or not. I don't see why training is adequate for everyone except white male cops. You know, if everybody else was doing the same amount of killings at the same rate, then yes, the training is bad. But Indian female cops, I've seen a bunch of Asian female cops in DC. And actually, I think a couple in Potomac. I mean, not Potomac, just Maryland, just this DC metro area, Maryland side, 355 area. I don't hear of them killing off people. I don't hear of Spanish female cops. You know, I don't know. Should all cops be female then? Maybe that's the solution. Anyway, 2. I couldn't care less about the 1 or 2 white people you could point out that got shot by the cops as well. Why? Simple. Because no one, especially whites, are getting killed at the same rate. If you want to use the raw numbers argument, then let's have a debate about which group of people commit the most crimes, violent or not, just crime. Okay? In the USA based on raw numbers. So that's why that whole raw numbers argument isn't going to work here. We're going to use rates. Then there's the fact that most, if not all the times, not all of the times, the white person that got shot can be seen doing something threatening. And despite that, the cop still tries to talk to them even minimally before shooting them. Hell, look at the Bundy Ranch standoff. Shit. Add that whites on average have the money to go after the cops legally. Whether they win or lose, keep that in mind for later. 3. No, we don't need to come together. Jesus fucking Christ, come together. Simple fact is, when cops are getting killed by black people at the same rate, black people are getting killed by cops, and all other groups of people are getting killed at the same rate by cops, then we can quote unquote come together. Okay? We're doing all this coming together against a common threat. Let's have the monetary power of every group come together as well. Yeah, that's what I thought. Now, if we really are all one, then everyone else should be getting affected by the rate at which blacks are getting killed by the cops. Much like if you carved out 1 pound of any part of something, say the human body, the entire thing gets affected. Yet you see that they aren't. Asians, Indians, Mid-Easterns, etc. are just fine despite what's happening to blacks. 4. Fathers not in the home have nothing to do with this. Fathers were in the home from just after slavery ended till the 60s, and that didn't stop what was happening back then to black people and the cops. The only difference is that there wasn't any technology to catch them as there is now. Well, while we're here, for anyone who wants to blame this on the need for pants to be pulled up, explain to me why women as a whole, and white, black, and Spanish women specifically, with Asian, Indian, and Middle Eastern women lastly, not taking all kinds of 12 gauges and PSG ones to the head, considering how much tits and ass cleavage they always show. Hmm? Black guys need to pull their pants up, and that somehow stops them from getting the treatment they get. But yet, the amount of tits and ass I see on a daily fucking basis, tits, ass, thighs, and God knows what else if they bend over or if they sit down wrong. And women aren't getting holes blown in their heads. Huh. Well, that's just fucking sexist, isn't it? Anyway, women as a whole need to pull their skirts down far more than black men need to pull their pants up. This is despite the fact that none of the black men that have been killed by the cops had pants sagging, but we'll let you deflectors have that one. 5. For all of you that say, no matter what, violence isn't the answer, there are 3 videos in the More Info panel that you should watch. That I'm going to say that you should watch. That's all I'm going to say about that. Apart from tell that to the white Constitution, gun, don't tread on me, oath keeper types, when they're told that the law enforcement is coming to take their guns and trample on their rights like they do black people. All right. Now then, the final part. I'll start with the cops first, since what they have to do is rather simple. If you want the cop killings, as well as a negative feeling, stigma, if you will, about the cops in general to end, the solution is simple. 1. Stop killing black people. The only reason blacks are getting killed at such a high rate is because you know you can get away with it. You couldn't do this with any other race or group of people without facing huge political pressure and/or huge physical pressure from said race or group. That would make the current cop hunting backlash seem like heaven. 2. Learn how to make correct split-second decisions, especially since most, if not all of the time, black people have been killed by the cops. There was an infinite amount of time compared to the actual quote-unquote split second. If you can't properly do this, then stop being a fucking cop. 3. Obviously, not all cops are evil. That being said, not all black people are evil. However, considering cops seem to have the mentality that blacks are dangerous criminals until proven otherwise, I don't see why blacks can't paint cops with the same all-encompassing sphere. Oh, why do I say this? Simple, because the real or supposed good cops, quote unquote, are letting these bad cops running around like the actual terrorists they are. I believe the term is guilt by association. Right. I'm sure there were white people during the days of slavery that were 100% against slavery and the societal treatment of blacks in that time. Much like I'm sure there was at least one Nazi SS officer that was against what was happening to all the victims of World War II in the camps as well as in Africa with their trial run. Look it up. Do you honestly expect said victims of both time periods to say, oh, well, not all are bad, so let's risk it and hope that we land on that 0.001 out of 100? Right. Well, that's how blacks in general have essentially had to view cops now, thanks to the some that are bad, and the fact that blacks aren't psychic. Plus the fact that 100% non-threatening compliance with police isn't 100% effective against not getting injured or killed by said police as it should be. And has been proven most notably with the black man caring for the autistic kid who had his hands up, was flat on his back, and still got shot after explaining who he was and what he was doing. 4. Related to number 3, there needs to be a safe, independent run, funded, and influenced organization that real or supposed quote-unquote good cops can go to whistleblow the evil cops with 0% chance of getting found out. I find complaining to the police about the police to be just as imbecilic as police doing their own internal investigation of themselves. I also know that, much like the military, corporate entity, and government, Isn't that right, Snowden? Or any other group that said group doesn't approve, to say the least, of someone from the inside shining the light of God on some of their more satanic ways, if you understand what I mean. The fact that these real or supposed good cops have to be in fear of retaliation for doing the correct thing in outing the bad apples should tell one and all something. Um, and an example of this was I forgot where the story was, but I think it was on YouTube, a video on YouTube. There was this female cop, white female cop, who was in her cruiser. She was, I guess, on patrol or something, and she sees this car just blaze past her at like 100 and something miles per hour. She goes and chases that man down, and it turns out that that man was a cop himself. I'm not sure if it was from her area, district, precinct, whatever the hell you would call it, or somewhere else, but he was a cop himself. Well, she didn't really give a fuck. She still leaned into him. And it turns out that, well, the law enforcement body didn't quite like that too much. Or the entities that make it up didn't quite like that too much. She went and looked up. Apparently, cops can look people. Well, obviously, they can look people up. But I think, from what she said, they can look up how many people, how many times some of these tags have been run. And she just got this weird suspicion from things that have been happening. So she went and looked it up how many times her tags have been run. And apparently her tags were run and her information checked like over 100 times. Like 50 to 100 or so, 100 or more times. Obviously that makes no sense. Nobody needs to be checking that much, especially if you haven't found anything the first couple of times. So the fact that she was trying to do the right thing, the proper thing, the law about the nobody's supposedly above the law, and she was getting intimidated like that. I'll say intimidated to say the least. I don't think she ever faced any actual physical harm. Should tell you something. Are there good cops? Of course. Hell, I could give some out by name. Hell, I know some good cops. I'm friends with some of them. Yes, I am friends with some cops, and that should tell you something. And the fact that these good ones, the real good ones, and the supposed good ones, uh, have no real way of outing the bad ones, especially if they're higher up, without having to face backlash from the camp, from the family, from the group, the team, should tell you something. So if cops can't go and out them their own without fear of retaliation, well, you expect black people of all people, the people that are the most powerless in this country, to trust them? Yeah, the fuck out of here, man. I mean, let's just. If I can find that video, I'll post it in the more info panel. God forbid it could have been taken down, but it might actually not be so hard to find. Right. If you can't do anything to them out of fear of life and limb, or self of self or family, how do you think us blacks feel? A simple fact of the matter is, you had better come up with something and quick, because these bad cops are putting the lives of you real or supposed good cops in danger with their foolishness. Sooner rather than later, some cop, or cops plural, are going to fuck with the wrong person and have the full wrath of, I don't know, shit, the Crips, Bloods, MS-13, Triads, Yakuza, and or whoever the hell else. God forbid all of them at once. And God help you cops then, because I'm willing to bet they aren't going to carefully pick out the good cops, quote unquote, to spare. Or maybe you won't mess with the wrong person. Why? Well, here comes the reason, which is the solution for black people on the black people's end. Remember all those times earlier when I said, quote, keep that in mind for later, or something to that effect? Well, here it is. The final solution to the police problem is to be at least the second most powerful group in the country, monetarily and politically at the very least. Really, it's that simple. Now here's the explanation as to why. First off, whites aren't going to easily give up the spot of number one, despite Asians having a higher standard of living above everyone else in the USA as of this writing. So that's why I say at least number two. Let every other race or group else fight for a third place on. If you notice, the cops aren't messing with any other group, even the Hispanics and Latinos, at the same rate as blacks. Okay? Why? Simple. Because every other group, Asians, Indians, Middle Eastern, Jew, etc., all have especially and perhaps also political influence to make any cop that fucks with them disappear real quick. When was the last time you saw Asians demonstrate for anything? Exactly. Yet when Peter Liang's nuts were about to roast on an open fire for what he did, fresh out of nowhere, one of the smallest groups in the USA, as a percentage of the total population, came out seemingly out of non-existence and not only marched like they were blacks in the 60s, but had all kinds of money throwing at his legal defense. There was a documentary on Netflix of some Indian religious man, Swami, I think is the term, I believe, who all these white, who he was this teacher, he was teaching, and who all these white women claimed he did all kinds of sexual shit to them when they were kids and teens. I can't remember if he actually had intercourse with any of them, or maybe he just touched them or licked them or whatever the hell, right? But he did all this stuff according to what they claim. He got arrested for it, and if I can find that thing, and I'll post the name of the video of the documentary, the movie, whatever. But he got arrested for it, and the man didn't spend a full 24 hours in jail before the Indian community came together and posted his $1 million bail. Also note, he wasn't harmed in any way, unlike some that go to jail for fucking with kids, in the literal sense. Not harmed by cops or other inmates. He was back teaching in a few days, if not the next day, if I remember correctly. I stopped watching the documentary after that, and I'm not sure how it ended. Whether he was proven guilty or not, and if he went to jail like permanently or something. My point is, when was the last time you heard of the black community doing something like that? Ever. Then there's the fact that in both cases, Asian and Indians, they make up a single-digit percentage of the U.S. population. If I'm not mistaken, and again, in both cases, not all 100% of said single-digit percentage of the U.S. population contributed. Imagine if cops were to terrorize Asians and Indians the way so many, even if not all, terrorize blacks. I bet China and India would have something to say about that, if it wasn't stopped immediately and the victims paid reparations. Take a look at the Middle Eastern population. With all the shit going on in the Middle East with refugees and this and ISIS that, you'd think they would be targeted more than blacks. Were during the first instance of Jim Crow era. You'd think they'd be targeted more. Yet how many Middle Eastern people have you seen have been threatened by the cops the way blacks have? I can't find one story after a day of looking on YouTube and Google and everything. I can't find one. In no case have I seen any other group of people getting the same treatments blacks have been getting by the police as of late. And anytime I do hear of something from another group getting of someone from another group getting fucked with, there's independent FBI investigations, GoFundMes, ad infinitum, and the cops ultimately end up roasting rotisserie style in the court and later jail. This is where black people as a whole, not just one or two tokens, need to be at. It also wouldn't hurt if we got full backing of black nations all over the world. This is where I praise the Bahamas for having the balls to issue a travel advisory to the United States as a direct result of what's been happening to black people in this country. If my home country of Jamaica follows through, I'm doing the same thing as I have heard they were thinking of doing. They too are to be praised. Understand, with money and the political power to get some of these politicians in and out of office, out, all this foolishness would end in less than 24 hours. None of these cops, state troopers, police chiefs, etc., are above getting flushed down the toilet diarrhea style by the mayor or the governor in order to save said mayor or governor's seat in office. Once said bad cops no longer have the protection of the law and uh, that tinfoil badge behind them, well, let's just say his and or her past is free to catch up with them unhindered, if you know what I mean. Now then, notice I didn't say march, and despite being a Christian, I didn't say pray. Why? Simple. Marching has never worked. And as far as praying, well, Ecclesiastes 3:8, this is KJV, of course, addresses that in saying, quote, a time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace. I dare say the time of love and peace ended when everything from black people's constitutional rights to their literal biological lives are being threatened. So then, what kind of war are we to have? A war of attrition? Well, that's only needed if some full-blown purge type shit ever happens. Okay, anything short of that, and attrition fighting is more inefficient than a human. Actually, rather than a Hummer with gas, far more inefficient. Uh, the only other fighting that can be done is the one that mentioned above. Lastly, there's no law of God or nature saying blacks can't be on top of the world, geopolitically and geoeconomically. Hell, even geomilitarily, as far as whites are now. As whites are now. Uh, Simply something to keep in mind, I say. How do I know? Well, simple. Whites are a minority on this planet and always have been, and yet they did it. They're on top of the world, and yet they're a minority on this planet. And that's assuming you include whites that are of Hispanic and Latino descent. Okay? From what I learned from my biology teacher in high school, a white guy either from Africa or lived in Africa for a period of time, worked there. Blonde hair, red hair, blonde hair, and blue eyes are all recessive traits. 99.99%, if not 100%, belong to people labeled as white. I'll say it again. Blonde hair, red hair, and blue eyes, all traits, 99.99%, if not 100%, belonging to people labeled as white, is a recessive trait, not a dominant one. Meaning, not only will it sooner or later be bred out of existence, perhaps, and in this case I will say perhaps the KKK and neo-Nazis had a point when they sounded the alarm on the death of the white race. I don't think they're going to go away anytime soon, but you know what? Hey, I don't have it. This is shit that was discovered by white people. Okay, so this wasn't any black supremacist Black Panther, Neo Black Panther group, some angry black man that came up with this. No. What I'm saying here is biological science that white people discovered. So, yeah. At least as far as I know, it was white people. I don't think anybody else had any hand in that. So, yeah. But I dare say anyone coming with any claim of superiority based on genetics, much less race, hence the dominance of whites over the world, won't find it. How the hell are you going to have dominance based off genetics when you have a base of recessive traits? Yeah, man, it's a dominant master race, and yet all of your traits, blonde hair, blue eyes, is recessive, not dominant. Okay, well, hey, whatever. I guess Hitler knew what he was doing. Anyway, why? It should be obvious. If people whose historical background is based in recessive genes, according to their science and studies, are able to do all this, what do you think people whose genetics are based in nothing but dominant roots will be able to achieve? If parity is achieved, monetarily and politically. And they're free to advance without the hindrance of white supremacy in all its manifestations. Now then, for anyone wondering, okay, But what specifically will get black people as a whole to the state I described? Well, it's simple. The same thing that got blacks from post-slavery to states such as Black Wall Street and the beating out of even some white areas in terms of standard of living and overall quality of life. Raw physical skills versus mental skills. Now, break. What I'm about to say here, please listen carefully, although you should have been listening carefully to the whole video, because this really is the only thing that can save us at this point. Really the only thing. So here we go. What I mean by that is skills that actually can be used as used to manifest things in the real world. Example of physical skills: A+/Network Plus/Security Plus certifications, Linux Plus certifications, all four of which yours truly is working on, although one at a time, obviously. ASC certifications, plumbing, construction, any type of engineering except social, hell, even farming, anything that is needed to build and maintain a country, a nation, country, whatever. Example of mental skills, which is what you want to stay away from: women's studies, political political science, art, music, sociology, anything where writing a book that doesn't teach anything. You are writing a book that doesn't teach any literal real world skills and is going around debating, talking, is the primary or only means of income for such quote unquote skills. Yeah, those you want to stay away from. There will be plenty of time for such pontification of theoreticals, as I call it, later, meaning after blacks as a whole are looking across at other races rather than up at them. Until then, keep that shit. Until then, keep the shit and down and thinking skills on the back burner. Alright, I'll say one more time. Until then, keep the sit down, keep all that shit, the sit down and thinking skills on the back burner, on warm, and the get up and do skills on the front burner, on broil. An example of what I'm talking about in action. The certs certifications. The certs that I'm going for involve me buying a book on each one, made by a man named Mike Myers. Oh, and by the way, all the names that I'm going to drop in this video, this video in no way represents their views and everything. This is just me saying their names because of what I'm referencing of their end. So yeah, any kind of legal disclaimers there. Mike Myers. He owns his own company, and I'm not sure if he's rich, but he has used the skills he learned, wrote books about it, to produce results in the physical plane. Not only that, his books teach others to do the same. Contrast this with none other than Richard Dawkins. Richard Dawkins studied evolutionary biology. His most notable claim to fame with that is some foolishness called the selfish gene, a concept that many in the biological community, many of his peers in the biological community, much less the scientific community as a whole, is laughing at him for. I like to think that people don't leave the things that make them a lot of money for something that isn't making them a lot of money, which makes me wonder why his most notable claim to fame outside of biology is debating in an area he has no knowledge or training in, that being theology and religion here. In addition to his books on the subject, most notably The God Delusion, his claim to fame and something he has made bank and something he has made bank in the millions on is going around debating people on religion, while for the longest time bobbing and weaving from an actual veteran theologian in one William Lane Craig, only to get exterminated by Craig when they did finally meet. Simple fact is, no one should make any significant amount of money, much less the millions Dawkins has amassed, simply by going around producing nothing at all, much less of consequence, and saying, in essence, I don't believe in fill in the blank, only to be made rich by imbeciles that follow him. religion style, while acting as though they're the alpha and omega final arbiters of truth, facts, science, skepticism, critical thinking, and all else. Even though they missed how he got rich saying the same thing they did, yet they didn't get one penny for it. No one's life is lessened without atheists and atheism. I dare say everyone's life is lessened if there is no gas to stuff into one's car because there are no chemical engineers, or no new computer technology because there are no hardware software engineers, or a whole bunch of broken shit everywhere because there are no certified techs that would fix them, because the certified techs that would fix them are non-existent. Why? Because everyone is too busy debating about women's studies or atheism versus non-atheism. Hell, not only does religion at least give something of semblance, that being spiritual health and if nothing else, but even Jesus, Yeshu for some, son of the entity thought to have created all of existence in the universe, damn sure got a job while walking around spreading the good word. What job did he get? That's right, a physical skill, that being carpentry. Okay? Hopefully you see my point. Whites can afford to have such wastes of time, energy, and space in one Richard Dawkins. Blacks can't. We don't have the social, political, and financial power as a whole for that. Lastly, you may be asking, well, if everyone else sees blacks doing this, especially with the end goal I set out, won't they get scared and pull another move that destroyed Black Wall Street? Okay, yeah, perhaps, but it won't matter. It won't matter. That's the great thing about being, say, A+ certified or ASE certified mechanic or some other practical versus theoretical skill. They can be used all over the world. USA, UK, China, Russia, Jamaica, or Africa. Okay. In any case, there you have it. The final solution to the police problem. Truthfully, the final solution to the problems plaguing anyone with a high melanin concentration and is of African descent. Yeah, that was real specific, and there's a reason why. And some of you know that reason why, and for the ones that don't worry about it. So to sum up that part, skills, physical skills, real skills, real world skills, were what got the slaves from slavery. They had all the skills, all white people as a whole back then. If obviously there were some smart ones, but a lot of the menial ones knew how to do was crack a whip, say nigger, and all this shit. But black peoples had the skills. They were the ones doing the work. The women had skills, the men had skills. Okay, well, let's do it one more time for ourselves, and they did. And they were getting on with their lives. That's what we need again. And if we get these skills and we can't get any wealth extracted out of other communities by working for them, well, you know what, we'll go make our own community. As we really should be doing in the first place, whether we can or not. Make our own community, have it be as strong as every other one, and then again, like I said, we can be looking across as equals rather than looking up as inferiors to other groups. Okay? Skills, get the wealth. Of course, we get knowledge also of how to of money, how to have a high financial IQ with money. Obviously, we don't want to just get skills, get money, and then give it back out, right? At least not at the same rate or higher rate that we get it in, right? So there's that. And then, of course, with that wealth, we start getting some sort of influence in the place. Start getting some, influence, just flat out influence. When you see on TV, call your senator, yeah, black people can actually do that now and something get done rather than you call them, they're like, who the fuck is this Negro on the phone wasting my time? I need to go get this $1 trillion donation from the Koch brothers, from the rich 1% in Potomac, from the, I don't know, whoever. These pool of millions of white people that just had a GoFundMe that made up $1 million. Nope. We can finally, through skills and getting wealth through those skills and storing the wealth, damming it up, we can be like, yo, our black asses want this, this, and this done, and whoever, be it black, white, Asian, Indian, Middle Eastern, Alpha Centaurian, whatever, they come and be like, man, let me go suck this black dick for this money, and let me go do what they want, much like they do with everyone else. Right. P.S. For anyone, this is just a side note. For anyone wondering, what about the machines and advanced technology and such that are taking all the low and even mid-level jobs? My answer is that more than anything is affecting everyone, not in high management or the 1% level. So don't worry about it. If nothing else, because even if you have to fight with machines for jobs, there's no chance of getting anything of consequence with a PhD in women's studies versus an A+ certification. And this is even though, from what I'm understanding, the A+ is next to worthless in today's day and age in the tech world, but whatever. Better a 50% chance than 0% chance. And that's it. Well, that is the video. I'm not really sure why nobody else has been able to link these points together, link this, I don't know what you want to call it, thought, dynamic, whatever, together, as to what the solution to the police problem for black people is in the mid and long term. The short term is getting, well, shit, Obama's useless. The short term is getting this shit to stop, either through legislation or something. Maybe we have to go to the world stage, and of course nobody else really much cares, but it's like, you know what, you're sitting here getting on our ass about us fucking with our people, but here it is, look what you're doing with the blacks. I believe that's what happened back when the U.S. was going up against Russia, and Russia was like, look at how you treat your people, and you're going to sit here and say shit to us. And that's why they kind of had to lay off black people for a little bit. I think it was back in the 60s, 50s, some shit like that. Was it FDR or something? I don't know. History's a little fuzzy at that point. But yeah, the short term is going to be hard. The mid and especially long term, I just listed out as to what needs to happen. So there you go. You're welcome. For the one or two that might actually watch this video, because I don't expect this thing to get more than maybe a couple hundred views in 5-10 years. But yeah, now you know what to do. Oh, and now also you cops know what to do. They should pay me for this. Anyway, later. Yes, here's a bonus one for you. A few loose ends that I thought about. Uh, that I just thought about. Thank God I thought about them before I uploaded this video. First of all, I am not part of any kind of movement, Black Lives Matter or X fill in the blank Lives Matter. Apparently there's a White Lives Matter now. Red, blue, green, gold, silver, ruby, sapphire, all that shit. Whatever, lives matter. I'm not a part of any of them, so before anybody decides to go that route, save it. Second thing, do I believe that? Well, no. I don't. Just to get out the way. Also, I do not believe that the Black Lives Matter movement is a hate group. I do not believe that at all. It obviously started by black people, well, supposedly, protesting and demonstrating what was happening to black people in these streets by the cops. That's where they started from. Notice how they weren't here 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago. What I also do believe is that people have infiltrated that movement, and basically you have agents that go and do other. I mean, hell, it's just like that Occupy Wall Street movement, where they essentially found people. It's like, yo, you're not part of us. And it turns out, once they got outed and were about to get their ass kicked, then cops showed up, basically confused everybody, and smuggled their dude out of there. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if some of these people starting these problems while this movement is going around doing their marching and all this other inconsequential, ineffective stuff are in fact cops themselves doing some kind of problem reaction solution or some variant of that. So yeah, um, because if you notice, these White Lives Matter people who, so, interestingly enough, have Confederate flags, not U.S. flags, Confederate flags. Even though it's not about hate, it's about heritage. That Confederate flag, supposedly. They were armed. Interestingly enough, they were armed and they got to protest outside of the NAACP, which is a white funded and white funded and founded organization. Okay, with blackface on it. Damn near literal with that Dolezal bitch. Okay, so there's that. Second one. Um, so yeah, they were armed. They came out armed. Like, this was the first time I've ever heard of them, and they came out armed. Let these Black Lives Matter people come out armed ever, right? Okay, so there's that. The second one is as far as cops go. For all of you that are going to come with the argument, oh yeah, you're saying all this shit now until you need some cops. Okay, number one, nobody should be calling the cops, least of all black people, for anything. Okay, handle that shit yourself. Which leads into the next thing. Cops are not needed. They are of no consequence. They are irrelevant. Why? Simple. Well, how many times have cops been there to stop crime from happening in the first place versus coming there after the fact to take notes? Take a statement. Armed note takers is what they are. Nothing more. Okay? Unless I'm to understand that all over the place, cops are getting there before the woman gets raped, and she still gets raped despite the cop being there. The guy still gets his ass kicked or shot at or falsely accused of domestic violence, even though the cop is there and sees that it's an obvious lie. Really? Really? No, cops do not get there. They get there after the fact. You need to defend your fucking self. It's that simple. I mean, the time, especially if you're in a bad area, hell, even if you're in a good area, much less a bad area is going to take like 20 to 40 minutes for them to get there because it's a bad area. Cops aren't exactly going to be rushing to any kind of scene of anything if you're in Compton, South Central LA, Southeast DC, Brooklyn, Bronx, New York. No. They would be rushing to Potomac, but those people live so far off the beaten goddamn path that it's going to take them still 40 minutes to fucking get there. Right? With sirens on and shit blazing because like one driveway is like 10 miles long because they want to be so exclusive and secluded from the rest of us riffraff. Okay? In either case, no matter which spectrum you go to, you're going to need to protect yourself. Unless I'm to understand you're supposed to sit there while you're getting stabbed, while you're getting beat, while you're getting shot, while you're getting raped, while you're getting robbed. Call the cops with the person there doing all that shit and then wait for the cops to get there. Really? I don't think so. Cops aren't needed. What I do believe should happen is that everyone, every man, woman, and child, and yes, this includes black people as well, everybody should be armed. Everybody, whether they want to or not, then make it a mandatory thing. Mandatory, open carry. First of all, get rid of this permit bullshit. Just open carry for everybody. Okay? And make it mandatory. Everybody must be strapped with at least something. Even if it's a little baby Glock or whatever the fuck. Glock or whatever the hell the smallest gun in the world is. I don't care. right up to like, I don't know, SOCOM or fucking Desert Eagle or something. Silencer or not, I don't care on that SOCOM, whatever. Okay, just everybody needs to be strapped with at least one thing, each and every person, and you'll find out that cops aren't needed at all. That's my view. That's just me though. All these right-wing people want to sit here and say, well, crime is low where everybody has guns. Okay, well, make it mandatory. Everybody has guns now. Do not subsidize it. The U.S. The government makes it mandatory. Don't subsidize that shit. Okay, don't subsidize it because then prices are going to go up. No. Make it mandatory and let the entire world market get in on this so we can buy guns online, buy ammo online from anywhere in the world. Keep that shit competitive, okay? Keep the prices down. Simple as. And let's see who's right. Let's see if these right-wing people are right. Oh, everybody should have. Well, really, they think everybody white should have guns. But everybody should have guns and crime will go down. Or let's see if these liberal people are right. Oh my God, everybody have guns. It's going to be a Wild West massacre. And the U.S. population is going to go to zero instantly. Well, let's see who's right. Either way, though, these quote-unquote founding fathers knew the problems with having the government and the law enforcement more powerful than the people. Okay? So I dare say they would be on my side with this. Right? Yeah. So yeah, I think those are the two. I think I might have had some more odds and ends to tie up, but those are the two main ones that I believe needed addressing more than anything else. If anything else comes up, somebody might trigger it in the comments, and I might respond to it then. But those two specifically. The whole thing with Black Lives Matter, I know they wanna. I know somebody's gonna want to lump me in with those people. Because every single thing is Black Lives Matter, even when it has nothing to do with black people or their lives. Yeah. So, yeah, those two. That one and specifically also my view on cops as a whole. Armed note takers. Handle your shit yourself. Stop depending on other people to come fight your battles for you. Especially considering all the times that I've been hearing now of people calling the cops to handle something and the cops end up arresting them or beating them or something. Like, I'm the one that called you, bitch. Like what the fuck? You know? So, yeah. Handle it yourself, people. Handle it yourself. Go to a gun range. Hopefully we get some X-race owned gun ranges, like some black owned gun ranges, white, well, I think all of them are white owned right now. Some Asian owned gun ranges, Indian owned gun ranges, just in case, because, I don't know, to be the only black dude in an all white gun range, something tells me white people wouldn't like being the only white person in like a sea of darkness in a black owned gun range. Practice, yeah, let's just. Yeah, yeah, and then Asian, Indian, Spanish, Native, well, whatever. You get what I'm saying. Not just black and white. You just have your own black-owned gun ranges, white-owned, Asian, whatever, black-owned ammunition makers, white-owned, Asian-owned, all that stuff. Everybody has their own stuff. Not saying that you can only shop with them, but yeah, you know what I'm saying. Okay, yeah. For all of you who know why I'm saying that, yeah. For the rest of you that don't worry about it. So yeah, that's my thoughts. Yeah, and that's it.